Explore the miracle where Jesus healed a man's withered hand on the Sabbath, challenging traditions and affirming divine authority. Jesus heals a man's withered hand on the Sabbath. The story of Jesus healing a man's withered hand on the Sabbath is found in 3 gospel accounts: Matthew 12:9-14, Mark 3:1-6, and Luke 6:6-11. Each version offers unique details, yet together they reveal profound truths about Jesus' authority, compassion, and the conflict between legalism and God's mercy. In first-century Judea, the Sabbath was a day of rest and worship, deeply rooted in the Jewish law. Observed from Friday evening to Saturday evening, it commemorated God's rest after creation, Exodus 20:8-11. Over centuries, detailed rules had developed to define what activities were permissible, creating a framework of strict Sabbath observance. Healing, unless it was life-saving, was generally prohibited. It was within this religious and cultural backdrop that the story unfolds. On this particular Sabbath, Jesus entered a synagogue, a central place of worship and teaching. Synagogues were not just places of prayer. They were also hubs for teaching, community gatherings, and the reading of Scripture. People often gathered to hear rabbis expound on the law, and by this time, Jesus was known for his authoritative teaching and miraculous works. His presence alone would have drawn a crowd. Among those present was a man with a withered hand, likely shriveled or paralyzed due to injury, illness, or a congenital condition. The exact cause of his condition is not detailed in the text, but it would have been a source of great hardship. In an agrarian society where physical labor was often essential for survival, a disabled hand could mean unemployment, poverty, and social stigma. It is important to note that this man did not approach Jesus asking for healing. Instead, he was simply there, possibly unaware of the life-changing encounter he was about to experience. The Pharisees, a group of Jewish religious leaders, were present as well. They were highly zealous for the law and often opposed Jesus because he challenged their interpretations and exposed their hypocrisy. The Gospel writers suggest that the Pharisees had already grown hostile toward Jesus by this point in his ministry. His growing popularity and his habit of defying their rigid rules were perceived as threats to their authority. They saw the man with the withered hand as an opportunity to trap Jesus. The Pharisees reasoned that if Jesus healed the man, he would be violating their strict interpretation of the Sabbath laws, which prohibited any form of work. Healing, in their view, fell into this category unless the situation was life-threatening. Luke's account, Luke 6:7, explicitly mentions that they watched him closely, whether he would heal on the Sabbath, that they might find an accusation against him. Their scrutiny reveals their hardened hearts. They were more concerned with legal technicalities than with the suffering of the man before them. Aware of their intentions, Jesus took the opportunity to expose their hypocrisy and teach a profound lesson about the Sabbath and God's mercy. He called the man with the withered hand to stand in the midst of the assembly. This act was intentional. Jesus wanted everyone present to witness what was about to happen. He then addressed the Pharisees with a piercing question. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill? Here, Mark 3:4. The question cut to the heart of the matter. The Sabbath was meant to honor God, who is compassionate, merciful, and just. To neglect an opportunity to do good, even on the Sabbath, would be to misunderstand the very character of God and the purpose of the law. The Pharisees, unable or unwilling to answer, remained silent. Their silence highlighted their hardness of heart and unwillingness to engage with the truth. Matthew's account adds another layer to Jesus' response. He posed a practical analogy. Which one of you who has a sheep, if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more value is a man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath, Matthew 12:11-12. By this argument, Jesus appealed to their common sense and humanity. If they would show mercy to an animal in need, how much more should they show mercy to a fellow human being? After addressing the Pharisees, Jesus turned to the man and said, "Stretch out your hand." The man obeyed, and as he stretched it out, his hand was completely restored, healthy and whole, just like the other. The simplicity of the miracle is striking. Jesus did not touch the man, perform any visible action, or even speak a healing command. His word alone was enough. The power of God was on full display, confirming Jesus' authority over both physical ailments and the religious traditions that had been distorted by human pride. The man's act of stretching out his hand required faith. Though the text does not elaborate on his internal thoughts, his willingness to obey Jesus' command suggests trust, even in the face of public scrutiny. Instead of marveling at the miracle or rejoicing in the man's healing, the Pharisees were enraged. Luke notes that they were filled with fury, Luke 6:11. Mark adds that they immediately began plotting with the Herodians, a political group often at odds with the Pharisees, on how to destroy Jesus, Mark 3:6. Their hatred for Jesus was so intense that it drove them to conspire with their usual enemies. Their reaction reveals the depth of their spiritual blindness. They had just witnessed an undeniable act of God's power and mercy, yet they refused to acknowledge it. Their rigid adherence to man-made rules had blinded them to the heart of God's law. The purpose of the Sabbath. Jesus redefined the understanding of the Sabbath, emphasizing that it was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Mark 2:27. It is a day for rest, worship, and acts of mercy, not for legalistic burdens. Act of healing challenge conventional boundaries and ignite your faith.